We talk a lot on this channel about how to use a home equity line of credit in order to build wealth. And you could use a HELOC in a lot of different ways, some smart and some not so smart. You could use it to buy, fix, and flip homes, buy it for long-term rental properties, as well as pretty much anything else like paying off credit card or consumer debt. I've covered all of these videos in the past. If you want to check those out, I'll put a link in the description box down below as well as up in the corner. But there's one thing I have not covered, and that is using a HELOC in order to pay for emergencies. When hits the fan, do you want cold hard cash, or could you rely on your HELOC in these emergency situations? Let's get to it. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you didn't already know, my name's Jay Costa. I'm a real estate investor, builder, and agent here in Northern New Jersey. And if you get value out of this video, please smash that like button down below and also consider subscribing. We are building a community here of like-minded individuals looking to build wealth in real estate, more specifically using a home equity line of credit in order to build wealth in real estate. So if that interests you, definitely check out our previous videos, check the description box down below, and I appreciate it. Now onto the video. Today we're going to be discussing a financial strategy that some homeowners do choose to use, and that is using the equity in their house through a home equity line of credit in order to cover emergencies and replace like a traditional emergency fund. In this video, I'm going to share with you what the pros and the cons are of using a HELOC as an emergency fund, the risks involved, as well as how you should decide whether or not using a HELOC as an emergency fund is the right or wrong way to go for your situation. First, let me clarify what a home equity line of credit is. A home equity line of credit, or a HELOC for short, is a revolving line of credit that a homeowner can obtain in order to gain access to the equity that they have in their home. And this line of credit is basically like a credit card, and technically you could use it on whatever you want. And one of those things is using it as an emergency fund. So this topic can be fairly sticky. I can frankly see both sides. On one hand, we always here on this channel try to use our HELOC to leverage our equity in order to build wealth in real estate investing and maximize our gains. But on the other hand, you never want to be caught with your pants down in emergencies. I could hear Dave Ramsey screaming at me right now to always have 6 to 12 months of personal expenses sitting in a traditional savings account. So now that you know what a HELOC is, let's go over the advantages of using a home equity line of credit as an emergency fund. Number one, you have immediate access to the funds. One of the significant benefits of a HELOC is that you could take the money as you need it and pay it off as you need it. And in emergency situations, time is of the essence. And having these funds ready to use can be a lifesaver. Number two is lower interest rates. Now, a HELOC has actually higher interest rates than when compared to like a traditional 30-year mortgage, but it has much lower interest rates when compared to credit cards as well as personal loans, which are two options that many people have to go to in emergency situations, and that could really drain you with all the interest that you pay. So if you have a HELOC to use instead of those two options, credit cards and personal loans, you will save on interest in emergency situations. Number three, flexible repayment options. Unlike traditional loans, HELOCs offer very flexible repayment options. You could choose to just pay the interest only payments during the draw period, or you could choose to pay both interest and principal in order to get rid of that debt faster, which is what I always recommend if you have the money. While using a HELOC as an emergency fund can be advantageous in certain situations, it is essential to be cautious and know exactly what you're getting yourself into and the potential pitfalls. And we're going to go over those right now. Number one, you do have the risk of losing your home. Remember, a HELOC is secured by your home, and if you don't make the payments, you can and will lose your home to foreclosure. Please make sure that you have a plan in place to pay back these payments as quickly as possible. Number two, fluctuating interest rates. So a HELOC, unlike some other, like a personal loan or traditional loans, is a variable interest rate. So the interest rate can and will change based on market conditions. Be prepared for worst case scenario interest rate hikes. And number three, credit score impact. So a HELOC can have a substantial effect on your credit score, especially if you take out a substantial amount of money out of the credit line. Please make sure you don't over borrow more than you could afford to pay back. Still having trouble deciding? Here are some questions that I would say that you should ask yourself before making a decision on whether or not you want to use your HELOC as an emergency fund. First, how much of an emergency fund do you actually need? Now, if you have a job, like a salary job that's pretty stable, that you get a W-2 or a paycheck, you may need less of an emergency fund than when compared to someone who's self-employed or an entrepreneur. And if you don't need all that much in order to cover expenses in an emergency fund, I would suggest honestly just saving up the money in a savings account. The way I see it, the less you actually need to save in an emergency fund means the less opportunity cost you're actually losing out on. But if you're someone who's like an entrepreneur, you're self-employed, or you work on commission, you're going to inevitably need more cash in a savings account or an emergency fund. So in that case, you may not want to lose out on the opportunity cost with that money. Number two, what is your risk tolerance? This is obviously a personal question, and it's going to depend on your lifestyle and your responsibility. You may want to ask yourself as well, how much stress are you okay and comfortable with? Do you have any assets? Do you have any dependents? If so, the risks may outweigh the rewards of relying solely on your HELOC as an emergency fund. Number three, do you have the discipline to pay off the HELOC in a timely manner? As I said before, a HELOC uses your personal home as basically collateral. So if you're not paying this back, you will lose your home. Considering these potential risks, using a HELOC as an emergency fund may not be for everybody. So here are some alternative strategies that you may want to consider. Number one, just simply building a traditional emergency fund. Just start saving up money and putting it in a standard savings account, which pays an okay rate at this point, and try to build up anywhere from, depending on your situation, 3 months all the way up to 6 or 9 months of living expenses. This is to cover unexpected costs in emergency situations, whether that's a medical emergency or if you lose your job or something like that. Number two, you could take your emergency fund money and put it in an index fund, like an S&P 500 index fund, and then sell it off if and when you need it. Now, this is a somewhat risky strategy, but there's one risk doing this strategy that is not included when using your home equity line of credit as an emergency fund, and that is there's no risk of losing your home. The only major risk that I see is if you need the emergency fund money when the stock market is taking a beating. And that may sound like a far-fetched situation, but these economic emergencies tend to happen at the same time. So keep that in mind. Number three, you could utilize a combination approach. Consider using both a traditional emergency fund as well as a HELOC. Having that small savings buffer may give you peace of mind, which is worth its value in gold in many situations, while the HELOC can act as a backup plan for larger unexpected costs. Maybe consider something like 50% of what you need sitting in cash in a savings account, and then the other 50% you could put it in like an index fund, and the HELOC can cover that portion of the emergency funds. That a lot of the time is what I do, since I want a little bit of a combination of peace of mind, yet also having my money grow in a comfortable and effective way. Now, I've given this a lot of thought when researching for this video, and I've come to the conclusion that basically using your home equity line of credit as an emergency fund really depends on your situation. It depends on your age, your financial situation, as well as who or what is dependent on you. If you are young and single and looking to make your mark, obviously you're going to have a higher risk tolerance because you're in major growth mode and you have much less to lose than a middle-aged man with a family. But if you're older and you're closer to a retirement age, do yourself a favor and just save the cash for a rainy day. You never know when you will need it, and if that situation comes up and you have it, you'll be very happy that you do. Just always remember to follow my 3 rules of the home equity line of credit. Number 1, always have a clear exit strategy. Number 2, only use it short term, less than a year. And number 3, never take money out of your HELOC that you don't have somewhere else to pay it back if needed. To sum this all up, guys, a HELOC as an emergency fund can be a viable option if you're a responsible buyer with a clear repayment plan. However, it's essential to weigh out the risks to the rewards and consider the alternatives that we discussed in order to suit your needs. Remember, always consult with a financial advisor because I am not one. This is just my opinion based on my experiences and situation. That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below if you use your home equity line of credit as an emergency fund, and if not, what do you use for an emergency fund? Do you just have the cash sitting there? Do you use a home equity line of credit, or do you use something else? Also, let me know, God forbid, if there was any horror stories, if you're using your home equity line of credit as an emergency fund and you had a bad experience. Drop a comment down below. Maybe that will help someone not make the same mistake that you did. Other than that, guys, appreciate your time, and I'll see you next video.